Hello everyone and welcome again. So we are on to our last module, and today I am going to discuss some of the programs for the exceptions in the part exception handling. So as per now, you know that there is a difference between exception and error, and we are going to talk about the exceptions. Now these exceptions, as you know, that the program code is correct, the logic is correct, only is that during the runtime the program fails and you get an exception. The best example is on the screen, that is, if I divide a number by 0, like in this particular case a is equal to 6 and b is equal to 0, and I say c equal to a by b, right, and I am trying to print c. So as you can see that there will be an error. So if I execute this code, so it says that there is a 0 division error. Now the objective here is to catch such type of exceptions so that our program does not stops randomly and it works out and it gives an error and it goes to the next line of code. So here you can see that once the error occurs, it is not printing the value of c, neither it is printing hello. So it is stopping here itself. So that is where we need to handle this kind of exceptions. So we'll see the codes one by one. Now consider this particular example. Now again in this particular case I am saying x is equal to 7 and a is equal to 0. Now this 0 is within the quotes, that means it's a character, right? Now since it's a character value, now if I am adding it to a numeric value, so there should be a catch, right? So as you can see in the output, unsupported operand types for integer and string. So it is unable to execute this code and it is stopping here itself. Now look at this particular code, again the same program that we have written here. Now in this particular code, what we are doing is that we are putting it inside the try and except block, right? So we have discussed this thing in our earlier lectures. Now here if I say x equal to 7 and I am saying a equal to 0, and I am saying print x plus a, right? Print x plus a, that means 7 plus 0. Now as we have got an error in the earlier case, in this particular case, so the exception will be handled, right, and it will print check the values and it will print out of the try except block. Now that is what I mean when I say that the program execution will not stop abruptly, but it will be handled. In the earlier case, the program would have stopped here itself, right, without giving any output. Now when I execute this particular code, you can see here it prints check values, either the values that I am entering, and then it is printing out of the try except block. So this is how the exceptions were handled. So let us see this code again and try to understand how they work. Again, if I write print x plus 10, so I have not declared x, so I am going to have an exception over here, and that is a name error exception, that name x is not defined, the variable x has not been defined. So this is a name error. Again let's try and resolve that error which was a divide by 0 error. Now in this particular program, as you can see, I am taking two variables x and y, and I am entering the values for the numerator and denominator, and I am taking a variable res and I am just dividing the two values and storing them in res. So it is again in the try and except block, and we are checking for the 0 division errors. So print r is equal res is equal to x by y. So if y is 0, so there will be a 0 division error, and that will be caught by this try and except block. right. So our program is not going to stop, but it will give a output denominator cannot be 0. So that is our objective. So let's execute this particular code. So you can see in the output in the console window that it is asking me to enter the numerator. Okay, denominator, now I am entering 0 as the denominator, and you can see it is giving me an output that denominator cannot be 0. So this is a 0 division error. Similarly, here now there are two exceptions there in this particular try and except block. One is handling the keyboard interrupts and one is handling the value error, right. So both type of interrupts we are trying to handle with this particular code. So where x is a variable where we are inputting a integer number, and I am saying that y is equal to x plus 2, and we are printing the value of y. Okay. So the objective here is to catch a number. If it is not a number, right, so it will be an error. Let's execute this particular code. So it's saying that enter a number, and let's enter a character over here. So as you can see, the program gives you an indication that please check the input. That was here, please check the input, okay, because there is a value error, right, since the value I entered is not a numeric value. Let's execute it one more time, and this time let's enter a numeric value. So as soon as I enter a numeric value, I get a output, right. So 2 plus 2 4, y is equal to 4, it's okay with that. But as soon as I enter any character, so it's going to give an error that please check the input. Let's move on to the next code. So again, this is a single except block, try and except, right. Within a single except block, we are handling the keyboard interrupts as well as the value error. So as you can see here, in this particular case, we have written two except statements, right. The same thing can be done with a single except statement. Okay. So except keyboard interrupt as well as value errors. So the program is executed in the same manner. So I enter a character here, and it's saying again, please check the inputs, right. So the thing is that you can put the exceptions within a single except block. So this is again another code where we are having except block without exceptions, right. So this is a try block, and these are three except blocks, okay. So one is for value error, one is for IO error, okay. So without any exceptions, that means like in this case, right, and you can see clearly the difference between these two codes, okay. So without any exceptions over here. Now what it is doing, that it is opening a file and it is reading the values from that particular file, and it is printing the values, okay. So let's execute this particular code. Okay, since the file exists, so it's saying that this is a text file you created, right. So if this text file is not available, okay, then we are going to get an error, right. So in that case, the exceptions are going to be handled. For any other exceptions which are not defined, like in this case, right, here the two exceptions which are defined, value error and IO error. So this one will catch it. This exception is without any exception values over here. So if it doesn't fall in these two categories, so it will fall in this particular except block, whereas we have not defined any exceptions, and it is going to print error occurred, program is terminated, okay. So this can be also implemented in case where you don't know what kind of exceptions there may be. So you can give a except block which will handle those kind of exceptions. So let's move on to the next code. Again, this is for the IO error, and then there is an except with a else clause, okay. There is an except with a else clause. So this is the text file, this text file exists. So it's saying that this text file exists and program terminated successfully. So let's try and delete this particular text file. So let's try this with a new file name, new file1.txt, and this particular file does not exist. So let's execute this code. You can see that there is an input error. As you can see, there is an input error, right? And it is going to the else part. After the else part, it is print hello. That means what, the program is not stopped abruptly, but since the exceptions has been handled, it is going to the next line of code, which is print hello. Since this particular file, new file1.txt, does not exist. So let's change it to new file, which is there with us, and execute this particular code. So you can see here, this is the text file. So this is the data inside the text file which has been read, and it is saying that program completed successfully. This one, this part which is with the else part, program completed successfully, and then it is printing hello, right? So that is the use of the else part, right? So if the program is successful in reading for the IO errors, it is able to read the file, it is going to print the else part. Otherwise, it is going to show you the input error if the file does not exist. Like in this particular case, again, if I change the file name and then try to execute it, you can see here we get an input error, right? So IO error is there, input output error, since the file does not exist, and after that it is going to the next line of code, which is print hello. So that means what, whatever piece of code you write after this line is going to be executed. Only thing is that the program is not going to stop in between if we use the try and except block. So let's move on to the next piece of code. Again, here we are trying to see the use of finally. So again, this is an zero division error. Okay, this the same code, we are taking y as 0 and we are trying to print the result. Let's execute. You can see denominator cannot be 0 and it is going to the finally block. Again, let's give a number here. Let's execute this code. You can see the result and again the finally block. That means the finally block is going to be executed in any case. Okay, so that was the concept that we have already learned about the finally block. So as you can see here, the result is 2.0 and the finally block is getting printed. Again, let's move on to the next piece of code. Again, we are trying to read the new file in the read mode, right? So we are opening it in a read mode and we are writing into that particular file hello Dibrugarh, right? And we are closing that file and we are saying print file close except print error. So if there is any error, it is going to go into the except part. We have not written any kind of exception over here. Any kind of error, it is going to go to the except part and it is going to print there is a error. So let's execute. Since the file is there, so file was open, as you can see, so there is a error. So that means what, it is unable to write into that particular file. Okay, why so? Because the file was open in a read mode. Okay, so it was unable to write into that file, so therefore the file was closed and there was an error because it was unable to write into that particular file. Okay, and if I give some file name which does not exist, again you can see I am directly going to error. There is no file close written over here because the file does not exist. This file does not exist, so there is no file closed written here. That means it is not going to this particular block, it is directly coming to the except block, which is saying print error. So I hope this clears how it works actually. Otherwise, if the file exists but unable to write, it is going on to the finally block, right? Okay, let's move on to the next piece of code. Again, in this particular code, the exceptions are being raised. We have already discussed how you can raise a particular exception. So again, we are raising value error over x. So again, if x is greater than 10, raise value error. So for a particular condition, we are trying to raise the error. The objective here is to raise the error in case we encounter some particular conditions. So again, I execute this particular program and it's saying that enter a number up to 10. So if I enter 5 and execute this code, so it's okay, 5 is within the allowed range. Okay, so it is printing that 5 is within the allowed range. Okay, again let's execute it and give a number which is beyond 10, say 15. So once I give 15, so it is going on to the value error, right, because the exception was raised as a value error for x if it is greater than 10. So I entered 15. So as you can see, the output is 15 is greater than the range. So I am going to the value error. So in this way, if your code demands, you can even raise certain exceptions and you can handle them. Let's move on to the next piece of code. Again, here we are raising exception with certain message. Now in this particular piece of code, again, x is equal to input, enter a positive integer. So we are taking a positive integer. So that's why if the inputted number is less than 0, that means it's a negative number. So we are raising a value error that it's a negative input. Okay, and we are printing that particular exception. So let's execute and see the console what. So it is saying that enter a positive integer. So let's enter a negative number. So when I execute, you can see I am getting this value error which has been raised saying negative number input. Otherwise, if I again execute and I give a proper positive number, so then there is nothing, no error, right? Okay. So this is how we can handle the exceptions by different means that we have seen in this particular video. Please try certain codes where you can apply all this exception handling. So with this, we come to the end of this particular course. This is the last module we are having, and we are trying to clear as many doubts that we are getting. Still, if somebody is unable to get their doubts clear, please keep on posting in the forum, discussion forum. We'll try our best to clear all your doubts. And there are many questions regarding the final examination. So the registration for the final examination, as we have been told, will begin from the last part of November and maybe in December. Once we finish up with the course, all your assessments are given. After that only the registration process will begin, and you will all get an email for the registration process. So I hope that you will register for the final examinations. The content of the examination will be same that you have been doing in the assessments and in the tutorials. So there is nothing to be very worried about the examination part. Feel very free to ask any question that you have in the discussion forum. So thank you. Meet you again.